You have 20 minutes.
Today morning was indeed enlightening. We were privileged to hear from Dr. Kapotkar, especially from my point of view, the importance of science and technology in pursuing India's foreign policy. Subsequently, Ambassador Rakesh also brought out the elements of foreign policy based on which foreign policy is practiced by India. So I would like to bring out the defense diplomacy or the military diplomacy, how it affects India's foreign policy and what needs to be done. But taking cue from what Ambassador Srikant brought out in Sanskrit, which I couldn't follow, but the Hindi narrative was quite clear that we need to speak truth. With that comes introspection. And whatever I say is based on my experiences while working in military. I'll try to bring out some salient aspects which need not be taken as shortcomings in our foreign policy, because as brought out, it is a dynamic issue. What we think eventually turns out to be different, because there are a lot of players and a lot of stakeholders. So towards that, I call them challenges to our foreign policy, and that would be purely from defense perspective. I'm sure, like me, a lot of students would wonder, we have the 4th largest standing army, the 5th largest, 6th largest air force, and so the navy and equipments in terms of new generation aircraft, nuclear submarines, aircraft carriers. What do we do with all this? Now here comes the general perspective that they are machines for war. But then when you go deeper, and of course take history along, words of famous strategists, then you realize what is the importance of military power. Because without military power, without defense diplomacy, foreign policy will lack in lot many spheres. Ultimately, it is national strength based on comprehensive national power which dictates foreign policy. I have taken certain policy definitions just for the benefit of students. I'll try and rush through. What is diplomacy? It is the way in which countries manage or conduct relations with one another, with the aim to promote common interest and to resolve conflicting interests in peaceful manner. Connotations, peaceful manner. And it is done through diplomats. Reduced to its most fundamental ingredients, foreign policy constitutes of 2 elements. They are basic, the national objectives to be achieved and the means for achieving them. Here comes the importance of power. It could be technical power, it could be economic power, or it could be a military power purely. Why diplomacy? All countries today are interconnected. What happens in Libya, of course, affects us. What happens in Japan or South China Sea again will affect us, because we rely and cooperate with each other in trade, politics, economics, defense, and a whole lot of other activities. It is diplomacy which allows us to keep up these good and close relations intact. It provides an opportunity for countries to pursue mutual interests, enables them to cooperate with one another to solve common problems, helps countries resolve conflict, differences, and disagreements peacefully, and also enables countries to help one another in times of need. The last aspect is more prominent because wars, apart from them, there are natural calamities which are taking its toll. And yes, there are mechanisms through which engagements are there, and India has been in the forefront, which I'll talk later. These diplomatic relations are conducted mainly through bilateral relations, regional relations, and of course international relations. Let me get into the elements of foreign policy. The relatively permanent material element, that is geography of the state concerned and its natural resources. Thereafter, the less permanent materials, that is industrial establishment, military establishment, changes in industrial and military establishment capacity, that is the developmental aspect associated with technology. The human elements, that is quantitative, the population of the country, and qualitative, that is policymakers, the leaders, the role of ideology and the role of information. I put military establishment and military capacity in white just to elaborate that foreign policy is a multifaceted and can impact a variety, in variety of ways that the nations interact, in which military establishment and military capacity play a crucial role in shaping foreign policy. This picture depicts as President of US, Theodore Roosevelt, who defines defense diplomacy, I quote, speak softly and carry a big stick, unquote. This might be applicable in case of America because they are superpowers. That may not translate for India, which is a regional player, yet to achieve a status of even a regional power. To me, it is an oxymoron because defense is to either fight a war which is based on us or wage a war to protect national interests. In both cases, defense diplomacy will play to counter the physical act of war. Defining defense diplomacy, I term it as the non-violent use of states' defense apparatus to advance the strategic aims of a government through cooperation with other countries. The defense apparatus of a country and its associated elements have emerged as one of the most important tools of defense diplomacy. We all know, last week mentioned, war is diplomacy by other means. A subtle difference between military versus defense diplomacy, which is important, which I thought I must apprise the student community. The military diplomacy denotes exchanges and interactions between uniformed services, that is military exchanges and exercises, whereas defense diplomacy could be used to identify activities undertaken by entire defense establishment, including its civilian bureaucracy, which are part and parcel of Ministry of Defense, the military industrial complex, and the R&D establishment. Let us see the importance of defense diplomacy. In the past year or so, we can appreciate that every major cooperation pact signed with foreign countries in the last year has an element of defense cooperation in it. Be it relations with France, wherein their president as well as the first minister comes to India to propagate about the French Rafale deal. Be it US, they could recall their ambassador when US failed to enter into a contract for multi-role medium aircraft, fighter aircraft, MRA. Though defense cooperation with friendly foreign countries has increased considerably, the full potential of defense diplomacy can only be realized if it is woven into the fabric of national foreign policy. How it interplays, we'll see later. Quickly, we'll go through why defense diplomacy. Firstly, the willingness of a country to engage another country in nuances of defense diplomacy, such as military exercises, indicates a high level of trust between the last bastions of protection of the nation state. It took phenomenal time, effort, and energy to have a small level exercise with China because the mutual trust was amiss. This would inevitably mean a high level of political comfort between the countries and a lack of animosity between peoples of both nations. That is basically culminating to confidence building measures. Secondly, since armed forces across the world have similar ethos and operating philosophy, it is easier for these organizations and their personnel to forge friendly relations, which is a crucial element of defense diplomacy. Thirdly, the considerable visibility and goodwill that is generated when a friendly foreign forces assist humanitarian and disaster relief missions does more for diplomacy than the year-round efforts of diplomatic engagements. To quote, we recently had a failure of desalination plant in Mali. The government of Mali requested, apart from other countries, the government of India to help them in their crisis of aid because the capital was short of drinking water. Evening we get the message, and by morning 10 o'clock, 60 tons of potable drinking water was positioned at Mali. And this generates phenomenal diplomacy. Fourthly, navies, because of their mobility and reach, are excellent means of sending foreign policy signals. For example, a US aircraft carrier just outside 12 nautical miles territorial waters of a country, or a fighter aircraft entering close to air defense identification zone, signals the strength of a powerful country. Now, what are the means? Quickly rushing through: bilateral, multilateral, appointment of defense attaches in foreign countries to practice the art of defense diplomacy, bilateral defense cooperation, agreements, training of foreign military and civil and defense personnel. On this, I would like to add the officer cadets of various countries who are trained in Indian military academies, basically NDA or IMA, have risen to become president of their countries. So try and appreciate the impact of defense diplomacy which they'll carry along when they become or rise to power. It will be definitely in the favor of the country. Provision of expertise and advice on democratic control of armed forces, defense management and military technical areas. Contact exchanges of military personnel, placement of military civilian personnel in countries, deployment of training teams, another very, very significant activity. All our neighboring countries lack a lot of training resources which India fulfills. And they have generated such a goodwill, be it Bhutan, be it Bangladesh, be it Sri Lanka. The officers who rise to the position, they do acknowledge that fact and they try and mold the country's national thinking favorable to it. And of course, peacekeeping operations in which India has participated a number of times and has created a name for itself. Anti-piracy operations are the in thing today, from Hormuz Strait, the piracy is at its peak, wherein even the foreign nations, they are putting requests to Indian establishment to provide safe passages. Quickly rushing through the historical linkages, because without this we will not appreciate much how defense diplomacy plays. Military theorists and practitioners like Sun Tzu, Chanakya, Frederick the Great, Karl von Clausewitz, or Alfred Hayek Mahan all recognize the interconnectedness of elements and the need to coordinate and integrate them to achieve maximum effectiveness. These respected intellectuals established the foundation of understanding the role of military beyond the limits of pure warfare. I'll move ahead because I'd just like to quote Sun Tzu again. For to win 100 victories in 100 battles is not the acme of skill. To subdue the enemy without fighting is the acme of skill. Here, defense diplomacy comes to the fore. Similarly, Chanakya and other thinkers have propagated the use of military towards diplomacy. I'll also like to quote John F. Kennedy. Diplomacy and defense are not substitutes for one another. Either alone will fail. So here is the need to complement each other and derive the best. This strengthens the necessity to synergize national security and military diplomacy. Before moving on to India's expanding footprints, going back to the same basic questions, why we have raised such a phenomenal armed forces. One, of course, is to protect our national interest, safeguard our boundaries. But the other significant aspect is to practice defense diplomacy. Today, diplomacy can be practiced only through power of strength. If a nation is not powerful enough, whatever it tries, the impact will not be there. Today, by virtue of a strong armed forces, signals are already being emanating that yes, we have got credible armed forces which can not only look after the needs of Indian defense, but also move ahead when there is a crisis in the neighborhood. I've already mentioned these things because there is paucity of time. We will try and just glimpse through. These are the number of exercises, naval exercises as a goodwill gesture and to engage foreign navies and nations India has conducted and is continuing with a more agile pace for one simple reason, that even the smaller powers want to engage India so that India can become a net security provider in Asia Pacific region. There are multilateral exercises which are already being undertaken. New engagements are also emerging as ADMM Plus, the first pure military engagement with ASEAN region militaries. And of course, the disaster relief exercises, which is carving its name for India. Coming to the challenges which restricts our full potential to utilize defense diplomacy. These are all by virtue of my experience and going through a lot of material which is available on open sources. I formulated a list of challenges which we face. it is for academic interest and to further propagate what needs to be done. Because as I mentioned, it is a dynamic situation wherein whatever is prevalent today may not hold good tomorrow. Firstly, we don't have a national strategy for defense diplomacy because it emanates from foreign policy. MEA is the agency which has the sole propriety to conduct foreign relations. And from that, it should emanate what could be the role of defense towards defense diplomacy. Here, each initiative of defense diplomacy becomes a separate case proposed by lower formation to be approached by various levels of MOD and NG. It is invariably a bottom-up approach, which has its own pitfalls, and many a times it gets negated. Ideally, MEA should be planning the utilization of defense in overall diplomacy as part of national strategy and providing directions to MOD for implementation. Then things become easier because there is a structured approach and people know what is to be done. Yes, there is an ambiguity in foreign policy formulation which leaves defense diplomacy restless. So there is a need of foreign policy doctrine, which I'm sure the academic side would take the cuddles. Here comes the role of think tanks. All put together, we can come up with foreign policy doctrine for which armed forces will be inducted into subsequently for tailor-making the roles. And I mentioned the absence of organizational structure, which I'll talk a bit later. In India, there is no defense diplomacy plan. Because when there is no doctrine, obviously there is no plan. Indian diplomacy initiates progress only if there is a clearly demarcated responsibility of individual positions in the hierarchy. So every case of defense diplomacy goes from case to case. What we kept hearing in the morning, a debate that whether it is a reactive policy or continuation policy. By and large, it becomes reactive because whatever happens, we are affected and then the policies are formulated. Here there is a need to have at least short-term goals, which should be clearly spelled out and shared so that each stakeholder is aware to its role and its importance where he needs to fit in. Absence of a coordination process at MOD. We have something called Joint Secretary Planning and International Cooperation, who heads all foreign cooperation. In the scheme of things, it was supposed to be headed by an IFS officer, but for whatever reason, it is being headed by IS. Now, nobody questions the wisdom, but then if an IFS officer is there, by virtue of his training, by virtue of his experience, he can grasp foreign relations, the nuances of it much better. As a result, the policy guidelines which emanate or directions which emanate, they are becoming simpler to follow. Similarly, international cooperation efforts of DRDO and defense PSUs are pursued independently. So here is a situation wherein armed forces, Army, Navy, Air Force, DRDO, PSU, BAM, everybody pursues their defense diplomacy policy inductions separately without much know-how or knowledge sharing of other services or agencies, which leads to duplication and results in loss to the country.
Please conclude.
All right. There's a need to create a defense diplomacy establishment amongst Ministry of Defense, headed by headquarters ideas perhaps, because of which a lot of pitfalls are there, and as a result, important assignments, foreign training, foreign missions get cancelled at the last moment for lack of approvals. There's no responsibility for the outcomes. There are functionaries galore where the file moves, and everybody wants to sit over it, yet when something goes wrong, nobody is responsible. So here is the need to have a post-audit to fix responsibility. Lack of coordination within the services themselves. Everybody pursues their cases separately, and eventually nobody knows what our Air Force or Army or Navy is doing. Slow decision making, I need not elaborate. There's a mistrust among the Indian neighbors. They are always grappled with big brother attitudes towards India. Whatever we do is less, and they are becoming more and more demanding, and of late instances have been where they are counterbalancing help from India against China.
Please.
Okay, so I'll quickly rattle out the way ahead. Development of foreign policy doctrine, defense diplomacy plan, organizational structure at MEA, MOD and headquarters IDS to facilitate military diplomacy, single point coordinator at MOD, special cadre at MOD SHQs, better coordination within the services, high level representation at international forums, dispelling hostility through interaction of armed forces, development of military industrial complex for arms export, capacity building of friendly armed forces, build and maintain trust in neighboring countries, establish linkages to assist distant operation, arms export, joint venture, shipbuilding exports. Now coming to conclusions, sir. The military force and diplomacy have historically been synergistic, their equation analogous to the iron fist under velvet gloves. Diplomacy is the velvet glove to manage international opinion through structured engagement and dialogues, whereas the defense forces are the iron fist, normally latent, to be unveiled and displayed or actually committed as option of last resort. So, defense diplomacy provides a strategic capability essential to effective implementation of India's foreign policy. I quote, the use of defense institutions beyond the use of force, deepening our understanding of defense diplomacy as tool of statecraft is no longer a choice, but a necessary component in our analysis of world affairs. Thank you.